Hello, patrons. It is Tuesday, July 10th, 2018. Here's your cup of Jones. There's a new pop filter on our mic, a new windscreen that we got. It's a little fuzzy job. I'm touching the mic, which I shouldn't be doing. And yeah, hopefully it does not block the face so much. So I'm very curious to see how our new shows look and sound. We're shooting lots of shows today. I should probably open with that. I'm in every show today. That came to be at the very last minute, planning stuff for this week. But I'm doing Cup of Jones right now with you, right here. This is it. We're doing it. So show number 1, already going well. And then after this, I'm going to shoot Huber Syndrome with Michael Huber. And then after that, I'm going to be on Friend Code with Daniel Bloodworth. And then after that, I'm going to be on our group stream from 6 to 8. Tonight is a tournament night. We are playing Trials Fusion. It is a game that I downloaded and very much prepared for, not only in my own personal skills, which will hopefully be on display tonight. Some sort of skill level will be on display tonight for me in Trials. It all depends on which levels we play, and so I'm very curious, actually, to chat with the allies today before we stream at 6 and try to figure out exactly how we want to do that. I think it'll probably just be mostly a time trial. There is like a co-op mode where you can race against somebody, but the rules are weird. It's not great for tournament stuff. Maybe it's for like a tiebreaker or something, but I think the thing that most of the allies agreed with was some kind of time trial. So we'd basically have like, we'd all play one level on level 1, and then whoever got the worst score would be knocked out, or the 2 people who got the worst score would be knocked out, and then we move on to the next area and then slowly whittle people out. So it's not only the time that you get on the course, it's how many errors you get on the course. And I gotta admit, I was trying to stack the deck a little bit by just training this last week, because I didn't have it on PS4. I originally had it on Xbox, and so downloaded on PS4, played through it again to train, because I knew I wanted to play all the levels, and then hopefully that amounted to something. Just second place is all I want. Can I just get second? So I know third place. If I just get a medal tonight, I'll be happy in our tournament. 6 p.m. twitch.tv/EasyAllies. Daniel Bloodworth will not be joining us live for this Cup of Jones. He usually does, but he is not here. He is traveling. He is en route. He's traveling around the world right now. He actually lamented last night in Slack. He was like, oh, I'm not going to be on tomorrow. We announced on July 25th of this month, from 6 p.m. on July 25th to 6 p.m. on July 26th, we will be doing a stream called Game Day 2018. It is our Able Gamers A Day to Game charity stream. We'll have more information on our social channels, of course, but I'll be producing a promo before I head out for Comic-Con. Basically explains what that is. It's very simple. We're basically just going to be streaming for 24 hours. We're going to be kind of handing the baton throughout the stream. So it's going to kick off with myself, Don Casanova, Ian Hank, and then we're going to have some other people come in, relieve us, and then basically do that throughout the whole stream. And then I will most likely return before the end of the stream. I don't know if Ian or Don will, but I'll probably pop in at the end before it wraps up. But the idea being to make sure people are watching us for those 24 hours and donating to Able Gamers, which provides consoles and controller configurations and basically emotional financial support to people with disabilities who still want to play games, which is something very, very cool. It was neat to see. I was playing a lot of The Crew 2 over the last couple weeks since we got a review copy, and the head of the street race crew is in a wheelchair, and they don't make a thing about it in the game. He's just a character in the game that's in a wheelchair, and I just thought that was neat, because a lot of people, I think I saw Steve Spawn from Able Gamers commenting after E3 about how much disabled representation there was in the games shown at E3, and so it's something interesting that I don't think a lot of gamers really think about, for many reasons. The difficulties that disabled people have when they're playing games, and the difficulties that they have in seeking representation and having their story heard. And so it's neat that Steve gets us so much support. I wish that we did way more charity work than we do here at Easy Allies. That's something you will hopefully see change in the weeks and months ahead, starting with July 25th, 6 p.m., our Able Gamers Day to Game stream. Everyone in chat is so sad that there's no blood. I'm talking about all sorts of things, but everyone's just still reeling. San Diego Comic-Con is coming up. I'm very excited for that. I will be at that. I can guarantee that myself and Michael Damiani will be at a meetup on Saturday at 2 p.m., I believe, is the target time. Again, promo incoming, social media info incoming. and that will most likely be in the park. I can't remember what it's called. It's like the kids park or something. It's right near a big fountain. It's across the street from the convention center. And the last couple years, we've tried to do meetups at areas where there's like tables and chairs, and like the rules have changed around those things, and we keep getting shuffled in different directions. And it's just so nice outside, and there's a lot of shade in that park. There's a lot of people just hanging out, and so considering that's all we're going to be doing as well, I think that would be a good location for that. So, but no promises, but there are some other allies that are talking about heading down as well. So I think 2 of us is the most we've ever had at an SDCC meetup. There might be 3, possibly 4 allies stopping by, so stay tuned for possible guest stars at that San Diego Comic-Con meetup. But hope to see a few of you there. I'm very excited about going to Comic-Con. Sorry if there's something awesome happening Saturday at 2. Every time I try to schedule, the last couple years I've looked at the Comic-Con schedule before I pick the time, and it always just ends up being Saturday at noon or 2 or 4, and it's gonna be right in the middle of, there's probably the Marvel Games panel is probably Saturday at 2. It's just like, there's no, I think it's just called Children's Park, okay. So it's never a good time to do anything at Comic-Con because there's always 500 amazing, incredibly exciting things happening. So yeah, Comic-Con. And yeah, as I mentioned before, I'm shooting a lot of shows today. Today is, if you didn't see it in the Patreon post, I only have 8 pages of questions and comments. I think I only have like 4 or 5 personal questions. So this could potentially be a very brief episode of Cup of Jones. Let's make it happen. Easy at Gamescom 2, likely will not be at Gamescom, but yeah, Gamescom is something that, there's a lot of events that we miss out on, and something that we can hopefully change in the future now that we are making the steps to move into a studio. Can look at things like traveling abroad to places as like kind of one of the next big goals of Easy Allies. Something that we can strive for, just like striving to get a studio. Time to find the next big thing. But first, personal questions. I should probably already, yeah, now's as good a time as any, because I don't think we got any questions about it. Before we get into personal questions, sorry to just, business questions, sorry to fake everybody out. We just did the community showcase. You can now check it out on YouTube if you want to watch that. That I sat down with Brad Ellis for 2.5 hours. We went through all of our comments from our community, and we actually have a question about the showcase specifically in here in regards to the comments. But we had to delay the, community showcase because we were originally supposed to do it on Thursday, and Wednesday night, I think, I came out, and I can't remember what I was doing Wednesday. I like went to some event on, Wednesday was 4th of July. I went home, and I went home and hung out with my parents, and I come out here to just kind of clean up, and I look over at the desk that we had, and the clamp that was on the back of the desk had popped through the bottom of the desk. So there wasn't any serious crazy structural damage. This like thing that's holding up all of the monitors and a light and a camera tipped over, and everything was still fine, everything still works, but it just kind of leaned into the desk, and I looked at it for like 10 seconds like, huh, look at that. I was like, well, it's 4th of July, I'm taking today off, I guess I'll deal with this later. So I messaged Slack, and I'm like, we probably shouldn't do the showcase, let's bump it to Monday. And then over the weekend, Ian Hink on site picked this new desk. I was like, do you want measurements? He's like, nah, I'm pretty good at just picking something on site. And I was like, that's not going to end well. It ended perfectly. He picked the absolute best size thing. And there were 3 standing shelves in the corner there. I removed one of the shelves and I put it over in a different spot and screwed it into the wall, which is nice. So if there's an earthquake, which is likely in Los Angeles, all of our mugs won't fall over. They probably still will. So to make space for the desk, and then here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Skadoosh. Look at this. So this, I don't know how much you might have seen of the old desk, but this is so much bigger. The old desk basically fit the switcher, which you can see in the middle there, the streaming mixer, which I'm currently making noise through right now, which is on the far right there, our regular mixer, show mixer, which is there on the left, which is plugged into all the standing table mics, and the keyboard. And actually, the mixer just kind of fell off of the desk, and so we had a different table, and we had a couple things, tucked underneath the mixer to flatten it out. So not everything fit on that desk. Now everything fits beautifully. So beautifully, in fact, that I don't know if you can really see it, but there is a tripod behind that far left monitor, which is the switcher monitor. The 2 monitors on the right that are like, parallel to each other are they are parallel. Everything, all those monitors are parallel. They're the ones that are next to each other, basically. A little bit lower are the PC monitors, and the one on the left is for the switchers. That's what we use to preview all of our cameras. Because we had a little space on the back there, we added a mic arm, and so the mic is no longer on the table. So Salad Mic is extended up in the air, so you can reach under Salad Mic to get at stuff, which is fun. It has one of these little puffy mic flags on it now, and we have we used to have a camera that was on a tripod by there, and now that camera is on a tripod. I'm sorry, that was standing, and now it's on the desk. And so that area over there, when you walk by the desk, is now totally clear of cables and weird stuff that could potentially fall over. We even got the headphones lying over there. The cards that we use for the camera and the mixer are now have space on that desk. And you can see there's still space for a salad, so he doesn't have to put it on top of the PC. There's a lot of space there on the desk. So it's interesting. It's kind of like we had our dip in May, and we fought back to get more support here on Patreon and in our live stream drive that we did, and out of a low moment here at Easy Allies, we rose like a phoenix and came out better than before. And so it was fortuitous, even though I was frustrated when I initially saw that desk being broken, that we were going to get a new desk. But I'm just absolutely in love with that thing. Even from afar, I can see it. And one of the old tables that we used to put our black curtain when I put out the desk for Lego building, a black curtain, black tablecloth, and like our lav mics and a couple cables and a couple of pairs of headphones, just some extra stuff over there that sat on a shelf. That shelf can now tuck neatly underneath the desk, and there still is plenty of space. And you can't really see it, but I got a new chair for Damiani and Ian. It's a little bouncier, a little comfier. It's not just like one of these chairs that we use for podcasts. And so that whole area has been drastically improved, and now if we stick at the 50K level, is ready to be moved into our studio. But for now, the home studio is looking a lot better. Thank you to all of you for helping us get to 50K for the month, and so we had a little extra money that, of course, is being put forward to our first month's rent for our studio, but can also be used for stuff like this and preparing for Easy Living. Thank you for the support, everybody. Time for business feedback. Here we go. Taking a long, dramatic pause so that I can see that in the audio levels. Clip it out easily when I do audio. Get that time code. Darren Clark. I believe friend code is taking away from the podcast. Too often Nintendo news is overlooked in lieu of coverage within friend code. I understand that you want to avoid covering things multiple times, but I think that the depth and breadth of analysis in friend code warrant double coverage of major topics. I personally don't care for the cadence of friend code, so I tend to avoid it, but I really wouldn't mind that it exists, but for its impact on the podcast. I can't speak. I am not Michael Damiani or Kyle Bossman, so I cannot speak to the decision-making process of headlines on either of those podcasts or any of our podcasts. I'm also not Ben. But I can tell you that Kyle Bossman does come at me a lot with questions of what to show, what to have in the podcast. Hey, have you heard any news this week? What do you think about this headline? Do you think that's podcast worthy? Do you have anything to say on that podcast? We talked about Fortnite in last week's podcast, which some people might have been sick of, but we had Michael Huber on, and so that was a headline. We were like, yeah, that's kind of strange. What do you have to say, Huber? And of course, Huber had a lot to say, and so we were like, okay, we can actually make that a topic on our podcast, and we can cover time with that. So I know, and I've personally seen it happen, a conversation between Michael Damiani and Kyle Bossman where major news happened. If there was a major Nintendo briefing or something like that before the podcast, we're going to talk about it. We're not going to put aside a major news point. So if you heard something talked about on Friend Code but didn't hear it talk about on the podcast, maybe once or twice, that is because there is a conference between Damiani and Kyle, which does happen. But I don't think it's less about you take that topic and then I won't talk about it at all. I think it's, what are you going to cover? Like, what's your angle? And depending on which podcast shoots first, the other person watches that podcast and kind of has a sense for like how the conversation goes, and so maybe steers it in another direction. But I just don't see Kyle not talking about something because he's afraid that that topic in its entirety is going to show up on Friend Code. If Kyle wants to talk about something, Kyle's going to talk about something. And certainly Kyle cares a lot about Nintendo whenever there's big releases. I remember Mario Tennis Aces came out, and it was fun. I enjoyed playing on the group stream. I'm sure I would enjoy it if I purchased it. I think Mario Golf is probably my favorite of the Mario Sports titles. But I'm not just finding a ton of time for it right now. But Kyle will definitely make time. Kyle's just very much invested in Nintendo, and so I think it'll be difficult. Damiani would have a hard fight, I think, trying to get Kyle not to talk about something. But obviously, cases like that, I'm always interested in hearing of a specific topic. So this was something that Damiani said on Friendcode that was not said on the podcast. I want to know why. I demand answers. I can't give you the specific answers, but I can sympathize. And I guess the sprinklers are going off. Apparently, they're fixing something in the sewers next door, over there in the house next to ours, because there was a lot of noise coming out from over there. So hopefully you don't hear it. We got the sprinklers going on. We need a studio. Brandon K. Gann, a couple of times during a recent episode for different topics, you said, that's the #1 feedback, critique, etc. for said topic. Now that Easy A has gone 2 years plus and on the cusp of getting a studio, what do you believe is the overall #1 piece of feedback you have heard, both in terms of importance and amount? And is it the same from when Easy A started? And tangentially, what has been the one, or more if you like, thing Easy A has answered, accomplished, or been able to overcome as a result of feedback, critique, requests, etc. from your various audiences? So the #1 feedback is always bring shows, the countdown for a long time. Somebody in this coming up asks about Level, which is the show that we used to produce. I got lots of Please Score trailers again before Trailer Jones came back. Final Bossman is probably the top of that list. There's a comment coming up where somebody says they want to bring back Final Bossman. So yeah, probably bring back, X show. And what is the thing we've accomplished? I just think I'm really happy. Considering we're now at the threshold of moving out of this space, I'm really happy what we've done with this space. I'm happy with a lot of, critiques that we had over the quality of the stuff that we produce. And while we still have lots to learn and lots of different places to go, case in point, that door is open, the sprinklers are on, because it's extremely hot right now in California, so need a little bit of extra breeze. But our ability to start at, from a Yeti mic on a table with 4 wooden chairs, to the point now where we are in a space that has been assembled and painted and lit in a very particular way. It's interesting. It's gone from a garage to a studio, and so it's interesting. It's been interesting coming in over the years and showing this room to people that may or may not be necessarily interested in video production or video games. And so them coming in and, kind of slowly realizing, oh yeah, I see what you mean. I see a couple of the cameras, sure. And we're at the point now where you walk in and be like, whoa, what are you shooting here? Whoa. Like, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 lights. Pointed all in this direction. What happens here? Especially since, it can transform so effortlessly, dropping down the desk, bringing back in the couch. And, if all the lights are off, you kind of come in here and it looks unassuming. And then all of a sudden, wait a minute, this is a production studio. There are 6 cameras pointed at me. Yeah, feeling good about that. But yeah, those are probably broad answers. I would love to hear your feedback of what you think the answers are to those, Brandon. And apologies for skipping your question last week. Taco, with Box Peak well underway and the 50K goal being in reach or already reached, will different allies have the opportunity to work on more pet projects? If so, has anyone, including you, voiced their ideas for said pet projects? I'd love to hear any hopes and dreams anyone has for something they'd like to do in the future, even if it's vague and subject to change. I hear you, Taco. Stuff like that's coming. Hopefully that will be a part of the new goals that we announce next month, kind of like the next phase of Easy Allies. And of course, a lot of that has to do with going individually to every single ally and being like, are you being served? Are you happy enough with the stuff that you are doing? Do you feel that you're working more on things because you feel obligated to, or are you working on something because it's something that you really want to do? And I want every ally to step back and take a long look at the stuff that they produce, because I think it's a really exciting opportunity not only to have allies be excited about the stuff that they're working on, not only to be able to produce new content, but being able to produce new content that makes sense in a studio. And having people hopefully appreciate and see that there are opportunities for us to change up our schedule and change up how we do and what we do, And the unfortunate thing is, So the reason why we're not going to get into details now is I don't want them to confuse people when we come out and announce what those goals are. I don't want people to say like, wait a minute, you said that, you know, Don wanted to make that one show on Cup of Jones, and then now you do the goals. Where's that Don show? It's like, well, all I did on that Cup of Jones was just say somebody was interested in doing something, and that's not a spoiler because Don's always interested in doing new shows. But so not only am I not going to get into specific details about that now because that information is coming, but I will tell you the unfortunate thing, and maybe we can do an editorial on this in the future. I got no ideas. Personally, just me, like for stuff that I want to produce. And this is something that's been killing me actually, because I saw Box Peak. And, you know, we talked about it for a long time, but then I finally saw that episode, and I saw that the impact it had on our community. I saw what Kyle was able to produce just by himself, and I think that one of the greatest, there's a lot of really great stuff about Box Peak. That theme song is killer, but I think the writing is the funniest bit about Box Peak. Kyle not only really knows how to write something funny, but is writing something funny specifically for the audience that would like, you know, Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon and BattleBots and all, you know, like all of this stuff. Is it BattleBots? What's the thing where you pull the cord and the little spinners to attack each other? BattleBots. BattleBots? That's like the TV show Jessica Chobot, right? What's that show? Battle Blocks? What's that? What's that show? My godson is like obsessed with it. I can't remember. Maybe chat will let me know. But it's Kyle knows what format he's writing for. And Beyblades. There we go. Beyblade. Yes, thank you. Oh, I love that so many people are coming in. How many Beyblades? We got 1, 2, Crossfire? No, not Crossfire. Thank you, Zephyr Moon, though. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 people. 5 people. Aaron Kirk Beyblade. Tyler's on it. Stepsel's on it. Robot Wars. And I don't have any idea that is that compartmentalized. That is like, here's what we can do for this budget. I have lots of ideas. I have lots of ideas for television shows and movies that I would love to produce someday. None of those are within any reasonable budget of something that we could do at Easy Allies. And I think that frustrates me because that is a fault of creativity. Like, I'm not coming from a position of just like, well, my stuff is high budget. Sucks that my stuff is high budget. I really want to take something that I have, a clever idea, and make it manageable. Make it something that can be produced by Easy Allies. Make it something that you wouldn't be watching and tell, like, they should have spent more money on this. I'm not sure if spending more money on Box Peak would make it a better show. Like, I think Box Peak's, you know, animation style and writing and voiceover, I think it all matches really well, and I definitely tip my hat to Bossman for that. So just personally, I just wanted to get that out there, Taco, that sorry to infer my personal thoughts into the business questions, but ever since then, I have been racking my brain for stuff. I have ideas, they're just dumb. They're just not, like, viral. Like, they're not... I think Box Peak's gonna blow up, and I'm excited about that. And my ideas are not blow-up ideas. They're ideas that, like, you know, 25% of the Easy Allies community will be like, oh, that's cool, I'll watch that. But, like, it's not gonna move the needle. It's not gonna, you know, really get our name out there like we should be doing with spending some, you know, money of that size. But, you know, rethinking new exclusive shows that we could put behind the $1 tier, having new vehicles for other allies to produce the type of content that they want to do, is totally at the front of my head right now when we're looking ahead at what the new goals are past the studio goal. Stephen Beaumont. The other console podcasts came up again, so I have a serious pitch for you to give to Ian and Huber. Genesis 5, the Sega Genesis podcast, where they take 5 minutes to discuss one Genesis game and their memories. Added as a sting to Huber Syndrome, easy update, or recorded after reaction shots and cut into its own mini-sode would be so cool. From the kids who didn't have an SNES. I didn't write that as a takeaway, but I will right now. What is it called? The Genesis 5. I love it. The Genesis 5 podcast. I can tell you this, of all of the new goals we will introduce, none of those will be podcasts. We're kind of at our podcast limit. Maybe when we move into a studio, maybe when we get more people involved in Easy Allies that would like to come by and maybe produce their own podcast with us, we can broaden our horizons. Maybe we can talk about that fun stuff, but we do too many podcasts. David Brickle, you want to be, but I love that idea, Steven. That's great. I don't know, if, maybe 10 minutes. I don't know if 5 minutes is enough. Maybe 5 minutes per person. David Brickle, you want to be at 50K? Simply add to the 50K goal that Final Bossman will return. That should do it. There you go. Point taken. Red. It's not my show, so I'll leave it at that. Reagan Raiden. My favorite series from Easy Allies is Brandon Plays Pokemon. Thank you very much. I know that it's incredibly difficult for you and Kyle to do another series with Kyle having less free time due to his work with Box Peak. But can we expect a future series for either the Let's Go games coming out soon or the unnamed Pokemon Switch game coming out next year? I realized that Brandon Plays Pokemon seemed like something Kyle was incredibly passionate about doing, and that doing another series just for the sake of continuing it may not be something he would be into. However, it would be cool to know if there are any thoughts or intentions of pursuing the series continuation. For me, if there were plans for doing Brandon Plays Pokemon Switch 2019, I would be more hyped than for that than E3 2019. Also, a series where you play Pokemon and/or Silver, Gold and/or Silver, or even Crystal would be amazing too, or any mainline Pokemon games. That's another common thing. Again, do X show, do Brandon Plays Pokemon again has definitely come up, especially Gold and Silver. It's just. We're going to talk about Dragon Quest XI later in this. I'm going to talk about my anticipated games of 2018 that haven't come out yet, because the last 40% of 2018 is my jam. There are so many games coming out that I want to play. You're going to be blown away by the games I don't mention. That I'm just like, oh, this is coming out and this is coming out. I'm so excited. But Dragon Quest XI is one of those, and it's Octopath Traveler is one of those. It comes out Friday, and it's one of those games where I don't really see myself putting 4 or 5 hours into at a time, because I don't really have that much time at any moment to play games. But I'm excited to have these RPGs because Dragon Quest XI unfortunately won't be portable, but I can play in little small increments. I can slowly roll out, and then it'll take me 4 or 5 months. Divinity Original Sin 2 is coming to consoles. Those games will take me a long time, but I'll happily go back to them and check them out. And so Pokemon Gold or Silver would be one of those, and so it wouldn't necessarily make for a good show. Generally, if you want to do a show where you're talking about something, you want to absorb as much of that in as short a time as possible before the show, so you have it all in your head, so like all your thoughts are organized. If you play something for an extremely long period of time, I think the memories kind of start to fade. And so even like when Game of Thrones would take 2 weeks off, I'd be like, what was the last episode? So that's one of the main reasons I haven't, other than just plain not having time, that I haven't played a lot of Pokemon stuff. But I think a Brandon Plays Pokemon Switch 2019 thing is likely. I think the old Pokemon stuff just didn't perform. Like, Brandon Plays Pokemon was great and got a lot of really great reaction from our community, but the views dipped over time, and the views certainly dipped when we did Brandon Sun Kyle Moon, when we did the follow-up, and Kyle and I played Pokemon Sun and Moon. I played a lot of it and then kind of fell behind him as far as like my progress, and wasn't very good at the game, but maybe if I play a lot of Let's Go Pikachu and then get prepped for whatever that Pokemon game is. Kyle and I still love to do that. We love that format. We stick around for the podcast. I'm sure he would have no problem. Just like, all right, Kyle, let's just hang out after the podcast and shoot a little bit extra stuff. We do Trailer Jones in that time too, so I could potentially push that back later. But Reagan, yeah, I would not be surprised if I see that happening. Again, no confirmation, not making a promise. But I know that Kyle would be interested. I know Kyle's eyes would light up if I said, "You want to talk about Pokemon, Kyle?" I think you'd be into it. Mr. Mags, why is there a limit to how many sponsors there are for podcasts? If someone wants to give $500 or more to sponsor you guys, it's weird to me that there needs to be an open slot in order for that to happen. I do remember at one point there were 11 people in the 500 tier. What changed? It's just the time with the podcast. Daniel Bloodworth and Kyle Bossman specifically because it's his show, feel strongly that once we hit it, there's a certain cap as far as how long I should take during the middle of the podcast to talk about sponsors. But I hear you, and that number has gone up over time. We have expanded that, and there have been times where we got one sponsor coming in, and we got another sponsor coming out, so there's like a little bit of overlap, and we're like, okay, we'll expand the roster a little bit just to include both of those people, because we are in communication with them, we are working with them. But yeah, we try to keep it short just for the sake of keeping a lot of the ad stuff short. And if you are caught up on Cup of Jones, if you watch all of the shows, you will recall several times in the past couple days, weeks and months, that people brought up the fact that please don't advertise more, please don't. They're like, I hate, these channels that have turned into, these people who advertise stuff all the time. It's the argument of whether it's the best to talk about patreon.com/easyallies at the end of the podcast or at the front. There's different people in different camps. Kyle Bossman is obviously in the we'll do it at the end of the podcast camp. But everybody's got, love that when you bring the coaster with you. Sorry. Everyone with headphones didn't deserve that. Alex Pizza. I loved Levels back at GT. Would you guys want to bring something like that back or something similar? Maybe. Level, singular, was a show that we produced, created by Mr. Ryan Stevens, that we used to produce back at Game Trailers. That was a very simple concept. We would pick a level, we would play that level, we would talk about that level for like a page and a half. It's a short 8 to 12 minute series we did back at GT. It's great because we are missing shorter content like that. A lot of people say that our content is too darn long. And that was a fun show to produce. That was a office type of show. And I say office and not studio because we're going to get a studio, and the studio is going to turn Easy Allies into something that is a little different from what Easy Allies has been, and will definitely be different from Game Trailers, because it is just a studio. It is not a place you go to have conference meetings and stuff like that. It is studio space. There are cameras there, PCs to edit stuff, lights, sets, and you shoot stuff and you're done. Whereas when we were in an office, we were getting paid to be somewhere Monday through Friday, getting paid much more than we are here presently at Easy Allies. And there's just that general office environment. So there's a lot of things that are taken care of for us. At Defy, we had a Coke machine. You know, we had office parties. Like there was a lot of so there were many people even outside of Game Trailers that were like, I'll do a level. Like I remember back at GT when we were working with Spike. Matt Blair, who was when we moved over to Defy Media, became much more involved in the stuff that we produced. Whereas at Game Trailers, at Viacom, was much more involved behind the scenes, but we would have editors that wanted to do levels. We would have just producers at Spike that are still there, that are doing stuff at the Paramount Network, that are like, I'll do a level. And so it was a show we knew could exist because months in advance, we would have people step forward and produce stuff. We would have levels done a lot in advance. But if we were to turn to the very overworked Brad Ellis, Ben Moore, Mike Huber, Daniel Bloodworth, Michael Damiani, and myself, who are all reviewing games for Easy Allies, and we're like, hey, you want to make more videos about video games? The answer would be no, because we don't have time. Case in point, I probably won't play Let's Go Pikachu because there's no time. But they were fun, and we like doing them. And if Easy Allies blows up, gets like there's 20 people instead of just 9 people working for Easy Allies, I could see us getting back to something like that. Jason Presents, or Jason Presents. Do you ever worry that the 50K goal is just always out of reach, as it is essentially the ceiling of Patreon rewards? In other words, the final thing you have to offer at face value. I know you mentioned there are other goals you and the Allies discussed possibly adding once a studio was locked into place. Perhaps a lot of these goals are dependent upon the layout and infrastructure of the studio itself, but if just 1 or 2 of these goals were not, and therefore could be added as 55 or 60K goals, etc., do you think it would be easier to reach that 50K mark, as you would get an extra support from both new and old patrons that may not be heavily invested in the idea of a studio per se, but would love to help you reach that 55 or 60K goal, whatever it may be? That is a long sentence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines. One sentence. It's a big sentence, Jason. Let's talk about that sentence for a second. Yeah, Jason, you're totally right. 100%. And the thing is, if we don't reach our 50K goal in July, that'll be pushing back the schedule of getting a studio and forcing us obviously to reprioritize ourselves. Like I said, next month we're going to be announcing new goals, and so we are planning to do that anyway. So if we don't hit that 50K goal, we actually have somebody who says because the 50K goal is taking so long, they've dropped their pledge. We'll get to that comment in a second. And that is the right of that patron to do that. And I encourage them to do that if they want to, to vote with their wallet. And I think that we need to be aware and cognizant of that situation that we are in now. So right after E3, it's in it's in like vacation time for Easy Allies. A lot of allies are going on vacation. Comic-Con is coming up. Easy Living is coming up. PAX is coming up. So there's like a lot of events. We wanted to do this Able Gamers charity stream for a long time. We were potentially thinking about doing that before E3, but then E3 happened and our new equipment thing happened, and so we put more focus on that. So there's a lot of things that are going on, and so for that reason and for other reasons, the process of getting a studio is going to take a while, but we need to be realistic about the fact that that's going to upset a lot of people and potentially slow our Patreon down. And so when you talk about that 55 or 60K goal, that's also part of why it's taking, why it would take so long to really iron out and cement those goals, is because we want those to be things that are realistic for that studio. We want you to not only help us get to that point because you want to see those things happen, but then imagine that studio. Oh, that 60K goal in a studio, okay, you know, like that kind of realization. And we have those ideas, they're just not cooked yet. You know, they're just not ready. It's not only the point of like, that's clever, let's do it. It's, okay, who's producing that? When is that show coming out? What assets are going into that? You know, what shows are less important than that in case scheduling conflicts occur? You know, where does that show fit into everything that we're doing now? Is that something that we can produce just with us? Is that something we need to bring other crew in for? And so, I have this weird long-winded comment about that, kind of like your very long sentence at the end there, Jason, but you're 100% right that a 55, 60K goal would help us get past the 50K goal. Therefore, it might seem like putting the cart in front of the horse, where you're like, you need those elements after that. It's just something that didn't happen because we weren't expecting to hit that 50K goal when we hit E3. We were like, oh, we'll get a bump. And then we got a little bump. We were like, there's that E3 bump. Nice. And then after that, all of a sudden, you know, all these crazy people came in to support us. And so, also keep in mind that a lot of that support just past 50K is owned by like 2 or 3 people. And so we had a lot of sponsors jump out right at the end of the month, and we do have sponsors leave, but I mean, these sponsors left right at the end of the month. And so it is a little bit of, you know, a stop where you get that comment just like on June 29th and like, okay, like good to know that support won't be around for the next month. And so that's why we're being as safe as we possibly can. I know that language can be frustrating when we're like, we'll see, because that's kind of always the point that we're at. In the past, it's been easier because it means we just won't produce a show. And there we go. You just won't see that show again. But obviously the studio is a whole different deal. But thank you for that. Thank you for clarifying that, Jason. I appreciate that question. Thank you for answering, Nick Ferris. Thank you for answering my question about Hall of Greats last week. I want to propose another suggestion based on your response. Last week, you mentioned the possibility of letting the presenting ally stop anyone from asking questions when time is low, which is kind of a difficult rule to enforce. With that in mind, how about designating a specific point in time where, for the remainder of the 5 minutes, no more questions can be asked, and the presenter is given that remaining time to conclude their answer to the last question asked. For example, at the 30 seconds remaining point, the timer says no more questions, and the presenter has 30 seconds to finish addressing the current question before they're cut off. This alleviates the problem brought up last week, but also keeps the same 5-minute hard cutoff, but does so in a well-defined, easily enforceable way. Thoughts? Yes, I like that. I like having the timer up front. I've talked to some of the allies about that. If I get voted out, that won't be in the next Hall of Greats, but I would like to put forth the vote to have a timer that everybody else can see. And yeah, I think 30 seconds is a good cutoff for that. The only thing I would add to that, possibly, Nick, is I would leave that up to the person in the hot seat. That do you want to take more questions? It's basically up to you to prohibit questions. You know, to basically be like, okay, you know, if you see 30 seconds left, if you're like, all right, no more questions, I'm done. Or if you just finished a question and you look up and there's 30 seconds and you're like, yeah, I'll take another one. What do you got? You know, like if maybe somebody wanted to say something, the ally can point to that person. I think it all just depends on the confidence of the person in that chair. I wouldn't want to give them so many hard structured rules that they're freaking out about a timer and worrying about stuff. If depending on the flow of the conversation, if they want it to go in a particular direction, I think they should be able to do that. Hall of Greats is so serious. It's like there's like we're doing the Able Gamer stream. I think that's going to go off without a hitch. You know, Easy Living, we're excited to produce because we did that last year, and so, you know, we have confidence in that. But just every time Hall of Greats comes up, it's like, man, we're going to screw something up. I know it. But I do feel good about that. I feel good. It was interesting going back and seeing the Hall of Greats advance in production quality. I think Hall of Greats looks much better now than it ever has, and that makes me feel good. Alexander Zirianov, most of your monthly shows, Fiasconauts, Q&A, Community Showcase, and now Top 10, are released basically in the same week. Isn't it better to space them out evenly over the month? Excuse me, Daniel Bloodworth chimes in. Reaction Shots is the second Friday of the month. Fiasconauts is the last Friday of the month. The Q&A is the last Saturday for patrons, but doesn't go public until a week later. The Community Showcase is the first Thursday of the month. Top 10s don't have a set time yet, but it seems like the third week of the month is the only one that doesn't have a monthly show so far. So maybe we can time it for that to work. So yeah, releasing stuff all at the same time is not something that we want to do ever, because it's always good to space things out. And yeah, we will get better at that. Obviously, Blood is a little cheeky. I guess the same 2-week period. It might seem like that because it's the end and the beginning of the month. I think while Alexander, that's something that we need to be aware of. That's how Blood does. Like, Blood will just drop a fact statement, just like, you're wrong. And you're like, oh, okay, Blood, nice. But that's what's great about Blood. Blood takes notes, okay? Blood's watching. He knows what's going on. He's got the answer. And I can say that because he's only going to watch... is he going to watch this? I know he watches it live to kind of pick up any questions that happen, but am I going to get the post-live viewing after vacation from Daniel Bloodworth? I don't know. We'll see. There is kind of, Alexander, a monthly cycle to Easy Allies. You know, at the end of the month, I got to get ready for posting the stuff for the showcase. I know that the podcast producer credits are coming up. I know that I got to get my fan mail ready. And then the beginning of the month starts. I got to make sure, you know, got to plan when Trailer Jones is going to happen. I got to get that showcase shot. Got to figure out what the new podcast, sponsors are. And so by the nature of us being, charging people on a monthly basis and having some goals that are monthly, the beginning of the month and the end of the month are going to feel like a big hullabaloo every time. It's just, that's at least the way it feels internally. So I'm not surprised that you're like, the first week sounds like, it feels like a lot of things are happening, and that's correct. But things like the Fiasconauts and top 10s are definitely adjustable where they are. So if stuff still feels congested after a couple of months, let us know. Dennis Mullert, I really enjoy And For That Reason so far, and I think the concept of having seasonal shows is great. Do you guys already have plans for what comes after? And For That Reason, AFTR, after. And will it follow immediately after that, or will we have to wait a little bit longer? You'll probably have to wait a little bit longer because we are in the weird studio flux phase right now. And so, and for that reason, we don't necessarily have something waiting in the dugout, waiting to come up and pinch hit for us for the exclusive show. But we have been producing, we are on schedule this month to produce more than one spoiler mode, so there will be exclusive shows. I like that we're getting, our spoiler mode consistency got a little shaky. We put up Ant-Man and the Wasp. If you haven't seen that yet, patrons, that is an exclusive show for you, $1 and above. If you're watching this, you can watch that. And Ian Hank and Michael Damian and myself sat down and talked about Ant-Man and the Wasp, which I wasn't so crazy on, but they liked a lot. And we had a nice conversation. And we're going to be doing, I believe, at least one more spoiler mode for the month of July. So we will be doing exclusive stuff along with Cup of Jones, but having the seasonal shows is something that will return before the end of 2018. But we have ideas that have been floated around from other allies. We don't have something specifically locked in yet. Casey, aka Enderglow. I want to talk about Community Showcase. After talking with a friend recently, I realized that Community Showcase is kind of biased towards certain kinds of work. Or, I suppose more accurately, it kind of just prohibits work that involves writing. Due to the word limit, writing works, 1, have to be pretty short, which is limiting, and 2, if they aren't short enough, the introduction to the piece gets cut out, which is often the most important part. I completely understand why you have a word limit for comments, but I feel that while that makes sense for people who are just writing in to give opinions, etc., it's a little unfair to people who want to fan art in the form of writing. Not everyone can draw or sing, etc. And if your writing is your main talent, the Community Showcase kind of bars you from showcasing that talent. My best friend submitted writing to the showcase, and while it was great, the introduction from their piece was cut out, which sucked because it stated the reason for the piece and why they get submitted it. I try not to cut anything I'm surprised that happened because I try not to cut anything. I cut a lot from Cup of Jones because a lot of people write in and they're like, "Hey Jones, what's up? Long-time patron. Just wanted to say you're great. Anyway, my question is," and then I'll start the actual comment just to expedite the show as much as possible. But the only time I cut stuff out of Community Showcase posts, as you'll note, I say hi Brandon and whoever a lot because that's the beginning of a lot of people's posts. Unless they specifically say he cut this out intentionally. So I hope I hope they said that. I hope they were like, I'm just explaining this and this is for patrons for people to check the post, but this is the piece that I wrote. And if I cut something out, I always try to reference it. I always try to say there's more available from this post on our Patreon if you want to go check that post. Since the piece was inspired by them seeing their friends at the 2-year anniversary. I don't know if I have a solution for this, but I figured it was something I should bring up since it's a common thread in fan spaces for writing to be less valued than art because it takes more time to consume, which is unfair to the writers. Yes. Casey, I will just add something that you might not be thinking of that I'm only bringing up because it's alarming to me, and it's something that scares me a little bit because it is a fact that I'm going to have to look forward to and be realistic about when I think about the length of my career, which is I'm going to lose my voice at some point. You know, there's going to be some point in I'm going to get to 60 or 70 and be like, I can't do this anymore. And people will be like, yeah, Jones kind of sounds bad. Like Jones used to, yeah, his reviews used to be good. And I used to find value in giving him money to read something that I wrote, but I don't know anymore. And 2.5 hours of doing the showcase is rough. When I first started doing the showcase, I read everything. Now I try to, you know, pass off the script to the guest that is with me. But the majority of the stuff that people write in is comments. It makes up like 70% of the time of the showcase every month. There's a lot of stuff that people write given that we want to grow Easy Allies and how much more popular we want Easy Allies to be. I only see that situation getting deeper and deeper as far as me just reading a lot of what people say. Just get closer to the mic when you're 70, sure. So it's just tiring. But I hear what you're saying. Maybe there's something that we can do where it can be kind of like a tease. So if you want to do creative writing, like I won't discourage you from doing that on Patreon. You can write a huge segment, just maybe labeled like this is the 500 word part that I want to be read in the showcase. And then that will tease a greater body of work that I'll say, this is actually part of a story that's very cool. I also I know it's kind of a short period of time, but like Randy Verschutten, when he was at that level for a while, wrote a piece I'm dying to hear the end of, which was some kind of dreamscape that he was having. And so it was kind of fun taking little paragraphs at a time, kind of like a comic strip. You know, every Sunday you'd crack open the Sunday comics and read a little more of Mary Worth. And so that is kind of its own challenge with writing, you know, to write something that is interesting in that sense. So there's not a lot of allies that do that. And so I think that, I know you say there are some people who who use writing as an art form. I think everybody does. I think writing is an art form, whether you want it to be or not. The art of communicating yourself is something that we strive to be better at as human beings. It's something I strive to be better at every single day. I'm very conscious of the words that I'm selecting, perhaps incorrectly, and how many times I'm saying right now. So I sympathize with you, Casey, and I will keep that in mind when we make small changes to the community showcase moving forward. All right, I'm going to say now because I'm stopped thinking about it. Jordan A. The one thing I've noticed throughout the 2.5 years of the podcast is the lack of traditional podcast sponsors. Blue Apron, Audible, Dollar Shave, Stamps.com, etc. Would this be something that you'd be open to if they reached out to you, or is more corporate sponsors something you want to avoid to keep with the crowdfunded feel of the company? The second one, we have been approached many times by companies like that, who come in and basically say, you don't have to worry about advertising. We'll take out, don't worry about advertising. I'll worry about blank. We'll worry about all of that for you. And so you don't have to set anything up. You just pick the time of the podcast. You give us the time code, and then you leave set amount of time in the edit for the sponsors, and we'll throw the sponsors in there, or we'll give you messages and specific stuff that you can read. Depending on your YouTube traffic, your podcast sound traffic, just how much viewership you have on your stuff, you'll get more money working in those areas. Two things about that weren't necessarily attractive to us at the beginning of Easy Allies. One, our numbers weren't that great. Our numbers are still not something to write home about. They are enough to support us via this Patreon, but they are not, like crazy good compared to a lot of our colleagues and or just other, famous gaming podcasts. I always get a little sad when I see somebody out there who are like, got all my podcasts, and I'm like, is Easy Allies? So we still have a ways to grow. And the other thing is, you're also helicopter, they found me. The other issue is that when you kind of, like you were saying, with they're not necessarily corporate sponsors, but like when you work with a company like that, you're kind of putting all of your eggs in their basket. You're just like, okay, yeah, you handle everything, and then we'll just worry about the creative part, where we kind of like handling that part too. We kind of like to be in direct control of the people specifically that sponsor us. And I think the major reason, just for me personally, is I wouldn't have met such fun companies like iKeyless or Sweet Justice or Jojo Denko or, of course, Hogue. Meeting these other parties and getting these very specific, very Easy Allies-esque sponsorship. I hope Score never comes out. That's a terrible thing to say to Ebb Software. Like, I really want them to get that game done. But every single time I pull that card and bring out Score and I think, oh, this game's coming out someday. Are they still going to advertise with us once the game is out? I wonder how that... I wonder how that, I keep knocking my, terrible. I don't know why. I don't know why of all days. Maybe I should do my Dino Crisis. But I just kidding. We've all been there. You've all been there when the condensate, maybe it's just too hot. Maybe that's it. Call the police or the fireman. Yeah, I love the crowdfunded feel, long story short. Parasite Paladin, I have a show idea, but not asking you to consider it or anything. I will. I'll consider it. Or it's just a fantasy, but I can't think of a name. So do you think you can think of one? My show idea would be that Kyle, Jones, Ben, and Damiani all sit down together, and each of them brings a single question comment from their own shows and ask each other the question. So mine would be Cup of Jones, I guess. Yeah, I guess that's something that that would be like a love and respect question or something. It's a fun idea. I think did I write that down with takeaways? Yeah. I mean, like, 4 Questions is a really dumb title. The Question might be a funny show. Easy Allies presents The Question. I'm curious what chat thinks. Name that, everybody. What's the name of that show? 4-way. No, host fight. Podcast fight. Yeah, and at the end we fight each other. We basically pick the best question and the best answer at the end of that. It's called Crossfire. All right. Thought just a deluge have created the greatest crossover of all time. Questionable is nice. 4-way. Hey chat, that's also good. Cross-examination, and for that question. Okay, there we go. That's what I needed. I needed at least 5 examples. Gustav Strombaum felt I had to write a question this week after hearing about potential 2 or more Allies Present streams at a new studio. My absolute favorite more than one Ally Present streams, including the Tuesday night group streams, are without a doubt Huber's full playthrough of various horror games with Kyle present, and Bloodworth's full playthrough of Earthbound with you, the Brandon Jones, present. Thank you. I think it's pretty obvious why the Huber plays a horror game while Kyle watches streams are great, but just in case it isn't obvious, Kyle would have never experienced these games otherwise, and we get to see Kyle experience them. There are, of course, more reasons, but that's the main one for me. But the reason why I love the Earthbound streams at the Garage Studio is because you, Brandon, were in the background. It seemed to me that you even enjoyed that working environment, and Bloodworth almost certainly enjoyed having you there to sometimes bounce stuff off of. Of course, yeah, Earthbound is a really interesting game to look at and then look away from for 10 minutes and then look back at it again and be like, what? Like, what are you fighting? Weren't you in a cave? What are you, like, on Mars now? What's going on? So yeah, I definitely see what you mean. And as I was saying, that's kind of the stuff that we hopefully want to recapture, and reasons why our streaming schedule might shake up a little bit if we were to get a studio. Now, of course, having you or another ally be on the couch next to the one playing would have been preferable, but just having one more ally present in the same shot, perhaps interjecting or watching the game during the stream, raised those particular live broadcasts above a lot of other streams for me personally. It also helps when research breaks are needed. What do you, Brandon Jones, have to say about that? And more importantly, did you enjoy it to the point we will be seeing more of that in the future? No promises, but I want to see more of that. All 9 allies were, of course, considered when thinking about possible future streams, with bonus working in the background participants, but you two, Jones and Blood, were the example and the inspiration for this question in particular. Yes. So the hope would be that more allies would show up for more streams, that we would schedule more stuff like that, do less stuff solo, and the idea that potentially things could be produced at the studio where, you know, if an ally is streaming and we're shooting something, they're not necessarily going to come by my garage and stream something while we're shooting something. It's impossible. But if we had that set up at the new studio where somebody could come by and be streaming something in another room while we're shooting a podcast or shooting Friend Code or Tabletop or something like that, and then now that they're there to shoot Tabletop, and then Tabletop's wrapping up, and maybe one of those guys or maybe more would be like, oh, Blood's playing whatever next door, let's just stop in and like pop in. So you might get more guest stars just kind of popping their heads in, and not just Amanda and Sophie because they live here. So that's kind of the hope for those two things. One, to see different types of shows, and two, to see that type of behavior happen. Depending on how that shoot, yeah, look, I did it. It's been on how that shooting / streaming schedule works out, which I can't tell you about now because I don't know. Stuart Jack, who among the current roster of allies is best prepared to take over Bloodworth's role when he decides to take on the job of president of Nintendo? I messaged this to Bloodworth, but I did not get a reply from him. Maybe he is not interested in being the president of Nintendo. That sounds like a stressful job. I don't know if he is. Who among the current roster of allies is best prepared to take over Bloodworth's role? We would have to splinter Bloodworth's role. That's the thing about Bloodworth. That's how magical Daniel Bloodworth is. He produces way more than one human being should be able to produce. We would have to split all of his responsibilities, like, you know, Robotech, like Voltron separating, like the Power Rangers. And we'd have to splinter off into different areas. I would be the T-Rex, of course. The Bloodworth T-Rex. Joetown, no, seriously, we'd be screwed. Joetown, I just learned that Patreons can be set up to charge people up front. Have you guys looked into this at all? We have. I feel like it would be a step in the right direction. It may help combat, I felt like it would be a step in the right direction. Sorry, I just got a text. That was funny. I feel like it'd be a step in the right direction and may help to combat the massive fluctuations at the beginning end of each month. It possibly could. That system is now currently in beta form on patreon.com. We have not been reached out to by Patreon to be like, hey, do you want to implement this? But it is something potentially that we're looking at. There are ups and downs. Bloodworth would just go to town right now on potentially what those downs are. I do not have them at the front of my consciousness right now. Yeah, it changes things. Obviously, we don't want to keep swapping, you know, producers in and out. Like, it is kind of nice having, like, the month-long producer. It also costs more in fees. There you go. I remember there's, like, a whole laundry list of things. And I remember at one point we looked at all of them. I do not have that information in front of me right now, so I do not know. But I know that neither selection is perfect, and so that's something we might want. It's just a question of which is more perfect, and so we might switch to something that we determine to be the more perfect solution. But yeah, just know that is something we have weighed in the past, we will weigh again in the future, and possibly make that change. It's not Same Without Blood here. It really is a two-person show these days. Yeah, I'm doing the best I can. We're almost at personal feedback, so at least we're moving at a brisk pace. Patrick Goutard, 50K Golmet. I recently felt cheated when it was clarified that the studio might not 100% happen if support doesn't stick at that level. I felt like I had to delete my pledge, which made me think, actually, now that I read this comment again, I'm not sure if Patrick did that. So if you did that, I fully understand. Well, obviously you're pledging if you're leaving a comment on the show, but maybe dropping your pledge to just $1. Which made me think, how do you process the pressure of negative or constructive feedback from the community while financially relying on our support? It's a tough balance. Do you meditate? Yes, I meditate. I've meditated on Cup of Jones before. If you haven't seen it, go back. It's in there somewhere. For the editorial, I sit in silence for 5 minutes, and you should do that at least once a week. Do you have a favorite show or music that you listen to? I like to watch documentaries. I like to put a documentary on in the background. While I'm cutting the podcast, I like to watch something very visually interesting. I've seen Last Jedi like 4 times now on Netflix because it's just fun to put on in the background and be like, oh yeah, that moment. Oh yeah, that moment. But yeah, it is a tough balance. I think it was one of the toughest things to get used to in the beginning of Easy Allies, the fact that these people over here that are different people every time. I'm not saying it's always just these people. It's like, let me put it this way. Every single time you make a decision, or every single time there is a topic or a move you have to make at Easy Allies, there will be a division of the community that hates that. We talked about the E3 coverage and the proportion of how much of us you see versus how much of the screen that you see. That is always, you know, being changed back and forth, but there are a lot of people that say put you at the bottom and put the press conference big. It's really not that hard. Why are you making those decisions? There have been people frustrated with the audio of our podcast ever since we got new lav mics. We were trying those out for a while. There are a lot of people that don't like the fact that I painted the wall gray. There are a lot of people that don't like a lot of the rules we set up for Hall of Greats. There are people that wanted us to do the group stream selection committee, and then we did that, and there are people that didn't like the group stream selection committee, and then we got rid of it. And there were people that didn't like that we got rid of the group stream selection committee. So there's always people like that, and I think sympathizing with those people, hearing those people, understanding that they're there, giving them a platform to speak, voicing their frustrations here on Cup of Jones. It's actually one of my favorite things to do because it means that I know there are people that were pissed about that. I know that there are people that are like, it's July 10th. Why are they not in a studio yet? Because this is going to take time, because this is the biggest decision we have made in Easy Allies history, and we have made decisions that were not as big as this that took months and months to plan and just to make sure that we were doing, because while we are thinking about that and talking with each other about these topics, we are also producing all of the shows that we are producing and live streaming and such and stuff like that and such. So that will always be a tough balance, and it will always be something that I want to do my best to communicate to the people that are most frustrated with those things. And so getting the opportunity like that through you, Patrick, through your frustration, addressing that and speaking to that is a gift. It's something that I really appreciate you doing and taking the time to voice your concerns so that everybody understands that. I can imagine that's frustrating. And again, if we don't hit that 50K goal, that'll be that'll exemplify that frustration. That'll basically be our audience telling us, not enough. We need more goals. It's not enough just to have that 50K goal. And then that is not only on us to put those goals forward as soon as possible, which will be in the month of August, to have those goals be realistic and exciting, to obviously, demonstrate a momentum leading up to being able to produce those goals, but show that even though we hit that 50K goal and possibly didn't get the studio right away, you can see things like improvements in Easy Living, our Able Gamer stream, possibly doing other events, before 2018 is out as evidence, or potentially, again, investing that money in the studio once we finally get it, so we don't have to have another drive or anything to buy desks and more lights and cameras and stuff. Then you'll say, okay, that's where that funding went. That was the reaction to that comment. Because this is a give and take, Patrick. This is a ongoing conversation. We do something, you let us know what you thought, we make changes, you let us know how you like those changes, and the process continues. And so, thank you for being a part of that process. It really helps. It really puts me in a positive mood when I read questions like that. Where like, I dropped my pledge, I don't support you enough, that thing made me angry because it's an opportunity to talk about the issue that made you upset. Time to get personal. I'm gonna drink more water, it's very hot. Only an hour and 8 minutes, folks. We're already at personal. LooneyMan83, thank you for hanging. They're leaving. Don't know why. It's a half-star Cup of Jones without blood? Brutal! It's not Cup of Jones and blood. Cup of Jones blood? Should we call it that? Should that be the name of this? The Cup of Jones blood. Feedback personal. Professor Metal Gear, what race and class did you play during your World of Warcraft days? I played a Night Elf Hunter, which is like hated or something. Maybe everything eventually is hated at some point in World of Warcraft, but a lot of animosity. A lot of animosity toward the Alliance, a lot of animosity toward Night Elves, a lot of animosity toward Hunters. Hunters is a straight DPS class, and so, we ain't tanking, we ain't healing. We're just selfish, getting our numbers in. One of my favorite Hunter memories was we were fighting the guy, maybe Chad can help me. He kind of looks like I do right now. Like he was cut off at the waist. He was in Ulduar, I think is the name of the raid. And it's just his like top half. And he does a lot of things with hands. Like you got to fight his hands, and he does lasers. And we're staring at him and we're planning. And all of a sudden I look forward and I'm like, hey, somebody's pet is running at the guy. And I was like, oh, that's me. Sorry. I don't know why. I had my finger over the pet attack button, and I just sent, like, the guy running at him. That was, haha, we had a big laugh. No, because I wasted 9 other people's time, so that was not very funny. Yeah, I was Night Elf Hunter. I really liked the old Night Elf Hunter stealth plus aim shot was a source of much frustration. I did not enjoy playing on a PvP server. I played most of Burning Crusade on PvP, and then we switched to PvE because we had a lot of people in our guild that needed and wanted to level up so they could be ready for the stuff that we were doing. And frankly, they were like losing entire play sessions because people were just hunting them down and killing them. They couldn't level up, and so they couldn't quest, they couldn't do anything. And so we were like, for the good of our guild, we're gonna go PvE so we can actually like have people available to do stuff. And when I first played, I was like, okay, let me, I just got done playing a paladin. I really like playing a paladin. I really like playing tank. I really like being a tank who can heal themselves. And so, but I just, I was also playing Final Fantasy XI, and I was a paladin in Final Fantasy XI, and so I'm like, okay, I don't want to be a paladin in, I want something just relaxing in World of Warcraft. It looks more like a much more relaxing game than a lot of the MMOs that I've played. So I want a real chill, just stay in the back, ranged DPS class. Not a big fan of mages, and so I looked at my options and was like, ooh, Hunter, what can Hunter do? And my buddy Todd and my friend Brent were like, oh, they're great. They do ranged. You need to carry arrows around, which is a pain in the ass, which they eventually changed. But you can have animals, and you can tame animals. And I was like, boop, sold. And I was like, what race is a good hunter race? And they were like, Night Elf. Night Elf Hunter is like the most common hunter. And I was like, boop, sold. Night Elf Hunter. There we go. So that's how I made that decision, and I have no regrets. Darnassus forever. I love. I enjoyed being on Alliance. I understand why the Horde is more popular than the Alliance. But so the Horde locations are certainly cooler. I remember switching, making a Night Elf, making a human Death Knight. No, not a human, because they're Alliance. I made I think an Orc Death Knight, and was running around old Horde areas, and was like, whoa, these are much cooler than the dumb Alliance areas that I was in, especially towns and stuff like that. But yeah, there you go. Long answer, simple question. Kerbu, with Octopath Traveler coming up over the horizon, I extend to you one of the most frequent topics that comes up in discussion about it. Which, I gotta admit, this has me scratching my head a little bit. Do you feel that the game's visual style lends itself perfectly to a Final Fantasy VI remake? Yeah, yes. A remake of anything. Remake of 4, remake of Chrono Trigger, remake it all. Does anything short of a high-budget production matching what 7 is receiving make the endeavor unappealing, or would you rather they never bother trying? Square Enix is an odd entity lately, and the non-mobile remake snub of 5 and 6 has always had me thinking, what if? Octopath presents an interesting remake scenario where 6 retains much of its existing visual fidelity while leaving room for a lot of other production bumps, such as voice acting and orchestral rearrangements. Full disclosure, I turn off the voice acting in Octopath. It's just too slow. It takes too long. I don't have a lot of time to play that game. I read what they're saying way faster than they say it. I'm probably going to do the same for Dragon Quest XI, where if there's not like really hardcore cutscenes of me seeing like emotion in people's faces, like I'm gonna read it and move on. So apologies to all of the fine voice actors that have worked on either of those games. P.S. Just to help draw a further parallel between Octopath and Final Fantasy VI, Octopath's producer said in an interview at Japan Expo that they view their game as a spiritual successor to 6 in regards to game mechanic evolution. I agree with that. It's kind of like what you could do in 6 with a bunch of systems built on it. Friday's previews have pulled back fan expectations since then, but it's interesting to see that fans aren't the only ones making comparisons between the two. Yeah, I think 6 has gotten snubbed in a lot of ways. I think 6 is kind of like an afterthought whenever it comes to like the most popular Final Fantasy stuff going on. You know, if there was to be any game right now that brought different franchises together, or any project or any consideration of like, oh, let's pick stuff from the fantasies, it would be like, of course, let's do 10 and 7 and 15, because those are super important. Let's get Lightning in there. And then, gosh, I don't know, maybe like someone from 4, yeah, and then like, okay, fine, 6. And it's like, it's just so weird, because like 6 to me is the best story that's ever been written for a Final Fantasy. It's my favorite characters. I think there are probably better like considering in 2018 what we think of a good RPG, better RPGs in the Final Fantasy series than 6. But 6 is just my absolute favorite. It was really my introduction to adult storytelling in video games. I did not experience a lot of that stuff on the PC growing up. I was really just a console platformer action dude, and so loved my Contra, loved my Akari Warriors, and you know, I just loved stuff where I was just running around shooting things. 1943 or 42, and so making that switch, played RPGs, kinda played, you know, Zelda 1 and 2, and played Dragon Quest 1 or Dragon Warrior in the States, and I believe I played Final Fantasy 1 for like a second, but it wasn't until the Super Nintendo that a friend of mine brought me over to his house, actually showed it to me on the Famicom. I saw it in Japanese for the first time, and showed me the opera scene, and like my brain exploded, and then I played it and was like, people are dying, and they're like adult relationships, and you know parent and child relationships, and just all of these crazy entangled storylines. And yeah, I'm blown away that I'll say this. And here's the thing, here's kind of one of the reasons why I'm just always like, I just get like tired of 7, is 7 comes out, they make like two anime. I believe there are 2 separate animes about 7. I know there's one on Zack, and there's another one. They make Crisis Core, they make a mobile game, they make Dirge of Cerberus, you got Advent Children, then they make, you know, like, there were like 20 branches of Final Fantasy VII. It was just all these other things they were adding on to the world of Final Fantasy VII. And then like Final Fantasy VII Remake gets announced, and people are like, finally! At last! 7 gets some love. It's like, okay. 6 is clearly getting the shaft. Not only that, but like the PC and the iPhone version of 6 sucks. It's just not great. It looks terrible. It's just like, it's such a weird combination. Like, even if the animation of the characters, the sprites, did not fit the backgrounds at all, if the HUD was like weird now, like even if those things looked good, which they don't, it would still look weird. It would still just be like, these are just 2 different, just change the whole thing or change nothing. But don't, stop. Like, don't do some weird half-assed effort. I'm emotional with 6. This is why I haven't brought 6 to Hall of Greats, because I'm emotional. And I don't want to get emotional with Hall of Greats. But yeah, I think that's probably a bad idea for the Octopath producer to say it's a spiritual successor to 6, because I think that preloads fans' expectations. So I can totally see fans of 6 having way too high of expectations for Octopath Traveler. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. I need to change the music. I need to switch my lower third because oh no, I'm not in the editorial phase now. Never mind. Fake out. The episode is going by so quickly that I'm unfamiliar with the speed of this episode of Cup of Jones. But yeah, there you go. Final Fantasy VI. It should totally get a remake. I think from me being as big of a fan of Final Fantasy VI as I am, and playing Octopath Traveler, I didn't really think about 6 that much. I wasn't like, I didn't crack open Octopath Traveler and I was like, ah, finally, the 6 game I want. I think there are a lot of turn-based games, turn-based RPGs that scratch that itch of not being able to play something that's like 6. And I don't really think Octopath Traveler is like 6. It's different from 6 in a lot of different reasons. The story is very, very different. The structure of how you meet characters is very different. How does the full game compare? I don't know. I played the earlier demo, and then I played 3 hours of the other demo, and I'm very, very, very much anticipating the game's release at the end of the week. But if it's not like 6, it's not going to make me angry. I'm not like preloading those expectations. Kola Ina, I like Brad and Ultimate Brad. What do you love about him, them? Thank you, Kola, going one by one through the allies, getting my personal hotakes about each individual ally. I don't like Ultimate Brad. I'm very, very glad Rainy Day Ian beat Ultimate Brad. Ultimate Brad's got a problem. An attitude problem. I don't appreciate it. I think we need positive vibes here at Easy Allies, and Ultimate Brad does not bring that. So I'm glad Ultimate Brad might be sitting on the bench for a little bit. But I love Brad. Brad's great. Brad's hip. You know what I mean? And I don't just mean his hair. I don't just mean his style. I don't just mean his looks. Brad Brad's into a lot of things that a lot of popular gamers are into. Like I like the competitive sense of Brad. I like that he's really good at Battlefield and Overwatch and plays a lot of these very competitive games. I feel like Brad, and a lot of this has to do with his youth. I mean, like Brad and I are like a decade apart, and so that's one of the things I most appreciate about Brad is just having some kind of immediate connection into that decade, into like, so you were born at the end of the 80s. Let me know what that was like, because I was born at the end of the 70s, and so the 80s to me, I was like, you know, talking to my parents when I saw Return of the Jedi. So there was, it was a different time, and I think it makes you into a different type of consumer in 2018. It makes your opinions about video games certainly change, and so I appreciate his youth more than anything. One of the things I think might have mentioned this when we talked about Huber. I appreciate his friendship with Huber. I appreciate his perspective on Huber. I like having that. There are a lot of entities out there, you know, Tim Geddes and his brother. Like, there's a lot of people that I follow in this industry that have known each other for a very, very long time. And I think there's something that's very attractive about that. Trusting someone's opinion because trusting someone's opinion not only about games, but about someone else's opinions about games. It's great when Brad, because Huber, as you know, can be severely hyperbolic. Huber a lot is talking about the greatest whatever he's ever experienced of all time. And so I love every now and then when Brad's like, wait, that's categorically incorrect. Like that, I know that's wrong. I know I was there when that happened and that's not how that went down. So it's nice to have somebody check Huber every now and then. Brad's great. Brad is also so down for anything. Brad is always the first one that asks if the meeting is over because he lives far away, and so he's always trying to get out of here as early as he can. So Brad's always the one that's like, are we done? And I appreciate that. But at the same time, if you needed help, if you need Brad to do something, any times I've needed pickups when we worked on the Souls retrospective, the delay of the Souls retrospective was 150% my fault because he was there every time with whatever I needed. And so it's nice when you do lots of unexpected things, when you keep changing up the format, when you do silly things like Busted Trifecta or bets or whatever. Brad is ready to go, always game. And so that's, I always appreciate that about Brad. Max versus the games. This week, can you tell us about Damiani? So Max is doing this as well. Maybe Max next week will ask me about Brad. How did you meet? What was your first opinion of him? What was your relationship like at Game Trailers? And how has it changed since EZA began? I used to work, it changed a lot at Game Trailers. It changed a lot when we moved into Pop Fiction. I talked briefly about when we met. One of the first things that Michael Damiani ever said to me was, if we ever want to reproduce the Legend of Zelda retrospective, he would very much like to be a part of that because he thought our timeline was flawed in the retrospective. And I appreciate that. It was the first multi-part retrospective that we did back at Game Trailers. And I told him, I don't want to redo Zelda right away, but do you have a second favorite franchise you'd love to do for retro? And he said, Metal Gear. And I was like, Metal Gear, let's do it. And he said, great, I'll write it. And I was like, great, I'll cut it. And then we did it, and it was awesome. But the big change is when Pop Fiction came around, and now known as Game Sleuth. Some people don't know. So a lot of people don't know we produce Game Sleuth, so go check it out if you haven't. And I was much more involved in Pop Fiction than in other shows that other people were producing because there were a lot of revisions to that. There were a lot of now we have Daniel Bloodworth who takes a look at a lot of scripts, but back at Game Trailers, Shane was the one who looked at all the reviews and sometimes special features. When I wrote a retrospective, I would hand it off to Shane, but for a lot of the special features, I did a lot of the editorial work, reading scripts and making adjustments and stuff like that. So there were a lot of Pop Fiction script adjustments that I made, and so we had a really close-knit relationship through Pop Fiction, and I really enjoyed that. Marco Rosado, who was one of our top editors back at GT, who I miss terribly, he edited a lot of the Pop Fictions, and so it was really fun collaborating with them, getting together, and seeing what footage we had and how those episodes would be produced. That was fun. I missed that process. Kyle Lee, have you heard the song Easy Livin' by Uriah Heep? I have now. It's become my unofficial theme for a certain special event coming up soon. Yeah, when you hear a song called Easy Livin', I thought it would be like Summertime and the living is easy. You know, I thought it'd be something along those vibes of just maybe kind of like a Caribbean vibe or maybe even like country, you know, just kind of like something laid back. This is a rockin' song. This is like 80s rock. This is like little AC/DC in there. Kind of reminds me of something that would be on the soundtrack of Heavy Metal. Easy living. I only heard it once, so that's probably not how the chorus goes, but we can't play that song for copyright reasons during the actual stream, but I can almost guarantee I will be listening to that song on the drive down or up, wherever, it depends whatever place that we get. But I needed that. I had a smile on my face the whole time listening to that song. Easy Livin' by Uriah Heep. U-R-I-H space H-E-A-P, Heep. Look it up on YouTube, it's fun. Easy Livin'. Liam Dennington, having grown up on consoles, I never really got into CRPGs, but it's a genre that ever since I got a dedicated PC I wanted to get into. I tried getting into older games like Baldur's Gate, and the complexity kind of drove me away. More recently, I played both Divinity Original Sin and Divinity Original Sin 2, stopped both after about 8 to 10 hours, and never really felt a reason to go back. Finally, I recently picked up Tyranny after doing a lot of research into the Obsidian CRPGs, and it's finally got me hooked. There's a lot of lead in, but question, what's a genre that you've wanted to get into for a long time but never found the right game to pull you in? Or if you finally found that game, what is it? I mean, CRPGs. We can start there. I played Baldur's Gate 2 on PS2. Is that correct? I played some, maybe like Dark Alliance. I played some game like that. I played that Fallout Brotherhood of Steel. I remember playing that co-op with somebody. There were a lot of those games where I played weird console variants of, but I never played all the way through because they were huge. But there were a lot of games that I would start and play about 2 or 3 hours of with a friend, and we would just enjoy, like Fallout was one of those, like just enjoy that that experience. But again, I was not a big PC guy either, and so I did not grow up on a lot of games like that. Personally, I'm a big fan of open world games, also being a big fan of open world RPGs. I do that because, and I know this sounds extremely nitpicky, but I like to look up, you know, like I like to have a sky to look at, and I find the perspective of those games to be very limiting, and so I wanted to get into that for a long time but never found the right game to really pull me in. I have played a lot of those games, but I don't know if I've ever played any game in that genre to its completion. And that's definitely a regret. A genre I wanted to get into for a long time. I mean, the Souls games I wanted to get into for a long time, and Bloodborne was finally the game that pulled me in. I wanted to get into RTSs for a long time and played them. I played Warcraft 3. I played the original StarCraft just for like a second, enough to know that like, this is too complicated. I'm not good at this. And Wings of Liberty really pulled me in. I actually just finished the StarCraft 2 trilogy. I finally played Legacy of the Void and loved it. And so I'm definitely into RTSs now. Tyler Manning, only question I have now is, how perfect is that Gaelic opera opening to Metal Gear Solid, and the track by Harry Gregson Williams in MGS2? So good. It's so, you know what's also good is the Symphony of the Night. The PS1, man, when you had like those orchestral soundtracks, all of a sudden, oh my, you know, and you heard, you know, a lot of these things. I remember being over at a friend's house, my friend Jeff, who I co-founded Game Trailers with, and he was showing me Symphony of the Night for the first time. And he put the CD in the tray, and he closed the PlayStation, he turned the PlayStation on, and he was talking to me about it, and I was like, yeah, you what? And like the opening music came just over like the save file. It's like pick a memory card, like that music. I was like, this is amazing. This is some of the prettiest music I've ever heard for any video game ever, and I still contend it's not only one of the best tracks from Symphony of the Night or Castlevania in general, but one of my favorite tracks just from video games. Thank you very much, Hades. Yeah, that track gives me chills. And the Harry Gregson Williams track is just absolutely legendary. It's crazy to think of that track. It's kind of like the Imperial March from Williams in Empire Strikes Back, where you're like, that was in episode 4, wasn't it? And it wasn't. He wrote that for episode 5. There were a lot of crazy pieces of music. Leia's theme, like there was a lot of stuff that came up in 5 that was not in 4, and you like retroactively think it is. And so it was weird going through the retrospective and hearing the Harry Gregson stuff and being like, then he wrote this theme for 2. And I'm like, yeah, but that theme was in 1. And then going back and listening to 1 and like, oh, it wasn't. Oh, yeah, he totally wrote that for 2. That was just his own crazy, like, Metal Gear theme. And they're both so good. I've mentioned this previously on A Cup of Jones, but one of the reasons the Metal Gear retrospective is one of my favorites is I planned the music out well in advance. Way more in advance than I have for any other retrospective that I've worked on. A lot of retrospectives, I just kind of take when it happens, and then I make sure to pick a couple tracks that I like to have to put in the last episode. Yeah, it's like alternates. But for your average retro episode, I usually only use about a dozen, audio tracks or music tracks. And very specifically, the Harry Gregson one that you're thinking of, I was like, you're going at the end. So when I talked about MGS2, I made sure not to use that specific track. You'd hear that theme, but you wouldn't necessarily hear that track. And so I made a point, like at the end, like, the Metal Gear theme. If you were to have a Metal Gear concert, the track that would open or end the concert, that was the end of the retro. Beaten Down Brian, on the last episode of the podcast, you guys talked about what an Undead Nightmare style DLC for Red Dead Redemption 2 could look like. But I wanted to ask if in a post-GTA Online world, do you even think we'll get one? Personally, I'm kind of having a hard time seeing it, and I feel like the focus will be mainly, if not entirely aimed, at adding it to the online. Although it's hard to be mad about it, given how much they've added to GTA Online, we never did get that single-player DLC for GTA 5. After all, we didn't, and I strongly wonder. I have a lot of friends at Rockstar. I've asked them this. They've just smiled and shake their heads at me. What happened? Were we supposed to get that, or what happened? But what I think is going to happen, I think you're right, Bean Down Brian, it will be a part of Red Dead Online, whatever that ends up being. But I think what they're going to do is make it much more accessible. So right now, the heists in GTA Online, you have to do if you are in a group. You are very, very tough to do, very expensive, and you have to save up a lot of money, and then use that money to, like, cross your fingers and invest in the heist, and then do the heist to get a certain amount of money back. And it's fun because you're putting a lot of stakes. There's a lot riding on each time you go out and you do those missions leading up to the heist, and then doing the heist itself. So it is very exciting, and I like the idea of being in a crew and doing that with specific friends. I never did that because I did not invest in a crew because by the time GTA Online really got up and running, and by the time heists came in, I had already moved on to other games, and my schedule did not permit spending that much time playing GTA Online on a regular basis. So I wonder if when they add new content, it's going to kind of be like a tiered affair where, we'll add some kind of Westworld zombie something aliens, we'll add something in the vein of what we did with Undead Nightmare. There will be a single player component to it. It will not be as big of a single player component as Undead Nightmare was for single player players, but there will be something you can do just by yourself, and then there will kind of be a path from that content to the higher tier, multiplayer focused, crew required content, so that you can at least get ready and earn those weapons and get that money and do that by playing this one part single player, and then getting yourself to a point where you can kind of just, like we're trying to set up in Destiny 2, I don't know how successful that was, set up a mode where you can just kind of raise your hand and be like, I need a crew, I'm willing to help, just message me or reach out to me when you see me online, because I'm willing to be that fourth wheel when you are heading out onto the racetrack and doing one of these tough missions. So with GTA 5, there was GTA 5 and GTA Online. You can access both in the same game, but there is a definite separation between those two modes, and I think there's going to be a blending of the online stuff and the single player stuff in Red Dead. I think that's going to be one of the big innovations. I'm just making that up. There's not a conversation that I've had with them. That is just me making predictions. Dominic Barlow. I have no doubt you're familiar with the recent happenings to do with the Guild Wars 2 developer ArenaNet. Buckle up, everybody. For those hearing about it for the first time through this comment, the long story short is that one of their narrative staff responded brusquely on Twitter to some pretty condescending remarks about her area of expertise. Fans on Reddit and the like were outraged, and ArenaNet not only decided that she had disrespected them, but made her redundant for it, along with another member of staff that defended her reaction. However, better that exchange could have gone, and for the record, however better that exchange could have gone, and for the record, I 100% sympathize with the ex-employee's response in this situation, the idea that a career in the game industry can be shot down by refusing to indulge every whim of the employer's user base, no matter how ignorant or unhelpful, is deeply troubling. Of course, user feedback matters, but respect has to go both ways, and there's a difference between responding to an artist's work or philosophy and dismissing it entirely, particularly where social media and a vengeful internet mob is concerned. You could also point at toxic fan responses to The Last Jedi as an example of this, and you yourself may be navigating the issue on some level within Easy Allies. How do you feel about ArenaNet's actions, and what should the rest of the industry be doing to toe the line between fan demand and creators' intent? Okay, since this is a loaded topic, I am going to address the specific questions raised by Dominic. How do you feel about ArenaNet's actions? I think they overreacted. I don't think they should have fired Jessica. I actually follow Jessica Price, and I followed her for a very long time. When I first heard about the story, I forgot she worked at ArenaNet, and I actually kind of came back around to her through this. And so it was interesting for me to find out that that had happened, because I was like, oh my God, what did Jessica say? And then I looked it up and I was like, that was it? Like, not only is that typical for Twitter, that's typical for Jessica. That's why I follow Jessica. That's why I follow lots of different people from lots of different perspectives all across the board, especially ones that like to really pack in their tweets, you know, like to really say a lot in a very specific amount of time. And the stuff that she retweets, the threads that she makes, are just extremely informative. It has nothing to do whether I agree with her, whether I think her language is appropriate, whether I, you know, like, it's just because I'm like, oh, whoa, that's a piece of information I would not have had at all. And I remember the first time I saw her offer up a piece of information like that, I was like, boop, follow. She's great. And in her bio, she's like, I do not pull punches. And her tweets and her language, she's like, I do not pull punches. And so it's weird to me, this kind of disconnect at ArenaNet, where they were like, she said, what? It's like, you didn't know that she was working with you? That's her. That's how she talks to people. And I do not think that was as edgy or as potentially as brusque as Dominic puts it, as I've seen some things that she's posted in the past. Same time, I can also see in the mind of the person who was commenting with her how they were legitimately trying to ask a question, which is where I will bring this up in the context of my personal life, in the context of Easy Allies, in the context of just general toxicity and frustrations that exist in this industry in a social sense, that a civilized social discourse is the greatest challenge of our time. That is where we will go into the history books as. When I am long gone, when you are long gone, when people in 2200 are reading history books about the turn of this century, they'll be like, oh, right, that's the time where everyone freaked out. That's the era where everyone all of a sudden had a voice, you know, and all of a sudden, you know, like, I can say things and I can be anonymous and nobody cares, and I can ruin people's careers, and I can make them super depressed. I can bring people to the brink of existence just by typing. How wonderful is this? And I think we will survive this era, but it will be brutal and bloody, and I just think it is a point, which is why I get really frustrated with people who are like, man, you say what you want. It's like, there's got to be limits. There's got to be limits to stuff. At the same, and I say that knowing that it is in contrast with what I said about ArenaNet. What surprises me about ArenaNet is that they didn't figure out those limits, that they hadn't already had this conversation with Jessica, and that they weren't like a little more transparent about that give and take between having somebody that was in a position like her, that is very vocal about issues that pertain to her, that she is very educated about, and frustrate her on a regular basis, and the efforts that they wanted her, the job they wanted her to fulfill, being employed by ArenaNet. It boggles me that this was the straw that broke the back of the ArenaNet camel. So yeah, I think that was messed up that they fired her. What should the rest of the industry be doing to toe the line between fan demand and creators' intent? Communicate. Talk more about these things. Possibly publicly, on blogs and stuff like that, in your company website or on the game. Use this to create a conversation. Twitter is a great place to say things. It is not a great place to have conversations. And so there are places where you can continue this stuff. I actually just this morning saw a lot of great comments from people who were like, in light of this decision made by ArenaNet, which we personally do not agree with, we are taking steps within our own company to communicate more with our social managers in understanding where those limits are. So the simple fact is that there needs to be limits on what people can say in social. When it comes to employing somebody, when it comes to the fact that, you know, we are giving you money to do this job, there always should be limits on what is appropriate in that space for people to say. I think what she said was fine. I think what the person replied to them was understandable, and I think that firing her was silly. There we go. But yeah, I think, and I think it's obviously should be eye-opening for us as well at Easy Allies in terms of what went wrong. You know, I think you look back at that exchange, you kind of make a photograph of that in your mind, and you realize what set off both parties in what directions. I think that's the point where we really need to be aware of, and I refuse to be... I am nitpicky about a lot of things. You can count on it if you are a fan of Easy Allies. Whenever I open my trap, you can just roll your eyes and be like, here we go. He's going to bring up the lighting in that one dumb scene that ruined the whole movie for him. But I get very nitpicky about things. I refuse to apologize for being nitpicky about language. I think we should all be very, very careful. I think whenever somebody criticizes the language that I make, I always take it very seriously because it's all we have, especially in this era of just writing out whatever we want to write, making video blogs and shows and podcasts where we're saying all sorts of things. It's not our intent that necessarily matters in all instances because all people have are the words that we choose. And a lot of times we take words and we leave them and then send them off to sea and there they go. And so when that word, you know, washes up on somebody else's shore and they're like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. And you're like, well, yeah, I kind of know that person. Well, we don't, most of the time, 99% of the time, we don't have that luxury. And so we need to be very careful of possibly what reactions our words can say. And so, you know, I just see people a lot of times that are like, haha, you got mad when I said that thing. And then 5 seconds later, they're like, hey, don't say that thing. And so I just think we're all kind of in that position. And I think we need to analyze situations like this. I'm not going to analyze it any further because I do not have all the information in front of me. And I'm very excited that I can possibly get this episode in under 2 hours. So with only 8 or 9 pages of Cup of Jones, there's no reason it should go longer than 2 hours. So I'm wrapping it up. Brian Paddock, what so far this year is your favorite game and why? God of War. Brian's is God of War as well. Also an update, I put my cat down this past Friday. His name was Biggs. Thank you for your words last week. They helped a lot. Here's to you, Biggs. Speaking of Final Fantasy VI, I'm sure you named your cat after Biggs from Star Wars, but Biggs is also in Final Fantasy VI. I think? Is it Biggs and Wedge? No, it's like Vix, isn't it? Biggs is in 5. And it's like Vix in 6 or something like that. Vix in 6. Biggs is in another game. Might be 8 or something that Biggs comes back. I don't know. But yeah, God of War is pretty darn good. Fortnite is probably pretty high as well. But as we get into the editorial, is it Biggs and Wedge? I thought it was something else. Maybe I'm wrong. Let's talk about my most anticipated games for the rest of 2018. So yeah, I couldn't really think of an editorial this week, and because it was a shorter episode, I now have 19 minutes to tell you about my most anticipated games of E3, not E3, just 2018. E3's almost over. E3 is like when like the year changes in January and like you're writing checks and you're like, it's 2018. It's like just getting E3 out of your head after E3 is tough. But this year's been great. I don't know if this year will add up to be as great. Last year was super, super good. But this year's very exciting, but there's no question that the games I am most anticipating more than anything are in the second part of 2018. It's Vix. Okay, cool. Vix and Wedge. Biggs is in 7 and 9 for sure. Yeah, Biggs comes back. I believe Biggs is in 8 as well. I don't think I've ever been as excited, as anticipated. I don't think it's ever been so painful for me to wait for a game as the wait that I am doing right now for some games that are coming out in Q3 and Q4. I get excited for games because games are my life. Games are my job. Games are the #1 topic brought up in my social friend space. Games are just all around me. And so I get excited for games just in general. I'm just excited for games. I'm excited for the industry, where it's at. I'm excited to be a part of this industry. I'm excited to have the lovely community that we have here at Easy Allies. Games are exciting. And so I'm just always generally excited for them, and it's rare that very specific games come out where it's not just the excitement of like, oh, that game's gonna do well, or like, yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about that, or like, oh, I played a little bit of this weekend, I'm excited about having a conversation on Frame Trap. It's like, give me that game. Like, I think Just Cause 3 was maybe like the last one that I was really just like, give me this game. Maybe I was too anticipated for Just Cause 3, and that might have affected my review score. But these games, I am telling you, let's get into it. Let's kick it off with Octopath Traveler, which comes out Friday. Oh man, this game is so right up my alley. I love the characters that I've been exposed to so far. I've played as 3 separate characters because I played as Primrose when the first demo came out, and I played as the character I do not remember the name of at all, the Beastmaster, and then I went clockwise to the next town, which was the healer, who has a very cool subplot with her adopted sister. She's the adopted sister, and her responsibilities within the church in that town, and did all of that, and just am so excited to play the rest of this game. I think the thing that was really neat for me to that upped my excitement level to like dangerous point is to the danger point, the danger zone, is the combat finally clicked for me. When I played the demo before, I didn't really understand the charge system. I didn't really understand that you could, like, you know, you could break enemies and stun them when you were attacking them with certain weapons, and how that worked. And I just finally like got over that hump with the battle system, and it finally made sense, and I really started kicking ass. And so, woo, sweaty. So, man, oh man, I'm excited for Octopath. I'm gonna hustle through that so I can hopefully be a part of a spoiler mode this month. Otherwise, I would definitely let that game just sit like a fine wine. But that will be what I'm doing with, and maybe I should jump to it. September 4th, Dragon Quest XI, the first Dragon Quest I will have played since Builders, which technically doesn't count, but in the mainline series, the first Dragon Quest I've played since 1. I played Dragon Warrior on the NES back in the day. I beat it, I loved it, and I spent more time with Dragon Warrior than I did Final Fantasy on the NES, and so I'm very excited to get back to the series. Played a little bit of it at E3, loved what I played. Again, we'll be turning the voiceover off, so apologies to all of the fine actors that were in that game. But unlike Octopath Traveler, Dragon Quest XI will likely take me all, like, I'll hopefully have it done before the end of the year, but that'll probably take me several months. I'll probably wrap up Dragon Quest XI right before GOTYs, just kind of hustle through it right at the last second, because I want to take my time. I don't want to rush myself through Dragon Quest XI. It's not one of those games that I think I need to be there for the main conversation. I think we have enough Dragon Quest fans. I think we have like Brad and Ben and Damiani and people that are very focused on the franchise. So I would much more likely, you know, defer to their perspective. Obviously, people appreciate when new people experience something, but just looking at all these other games that are coming out, I most likely will not have time to play all of them at the same time. So I will just go and sip, you know, like a fine appetizer, just kind of like yum yum yum. Just like nachos, one chip at a time. I will experience Dragon Quest XI. Divinity Original Sin 2 comes out a couple days before that on August 31st, and I played a little bit of it on PC, but I'm excited to really dive into that. Same example where it's just like an RPG that's going to take me a long time, probably more than 2018. I'll probably finish it sometime in 2019, but it'll be really fun having an RPG that I can jump into. And every time that I played Divinity Original Sin 2, it was for a preview event, and so it was a predefined party, so I just jumped in, and they're like, here's your party, just use them. It's gonna be really fun to like pick my own party and make my own decisions and mold them the way I want to mold them. All of these games are great, but on September 7th, Spider-Man. And I've recently said, and I'm going to change this, and I'm not going to feel guilty about it, because somebody asked one time if I had Spider-Man and Red Dead Redemption 2 in my hands, which would I play first? And I would play Spider-Man first. I have now changed my opinion on that, and I'll explain why. If I had to, I would definitely pop in Red Dead. But because my main curiosity was Spider-Man, I'm pretty sure, mostly sure, almost 100% confident that Red Dead's gonna feel good. The shooting in that game's gonna feel good. Having played as much GTA Online as I have, and then going back and playing Red Dead Redemption, and then going back and playing more GTA Online, I have a pretty good idea of how that game's gonna feel. I just really want to sit back with a warm blanket and a spot of tea and just uninterrupted, take the phone off the hook, lock the doors, you know, close the blinds, just play the hell out of Red Dead Redemption 2. But at that moment, when I was asked that question, I was so curious how Spider-Man controlled. That was just like one of my major questions and fears, to be honest. Like, I was like, there's got to be some weird gimmick about how he moves or something, how he runs on walls, maybe the combat is weird or something, like, because every time somebody made a Spider-Man game up until now, it was kind of like, here's our own little weird thing on Spider-Man, and you're like, stop it with the weird gameplay mechanic thing, like, don't do a weird little gimmick and make that what like the whole game is centered around, just make a good Spider-Man game. And like, that's what they're doing, and I've confirmed that at E3, and I played it, and it was fun. And so now I've answered that question, so now I moved on. I've evolved to the next stage of hype, which is just, give me Red Dead already. But we'll get to Red Dead. But seriously, Spider-Man, now that we know how many different villains are in it, I don't think we have yet seen New York at night. We've seen like New York from afar at night because we had a night scene when he was flying over on a helicopter to the prison in the E3 gameplay demo. But have yet to see Times Square at night. Have yet to hang around. I don't know if we'll be able to hang out on the Statue of Liberty. I think you had to like grab a helicopter. I think there was a helicopter that made its way back and forth in the PS2 game Spider-Man 2, and that's how you got over to Ellis Island. But I'm not sure how that works out in the new Spider-Man game. So I am, just very much, oh man, I'm so excited to play that. That will definitely be something where I'm going to foul something up. Cup of Jones is going to come by that week, and I'm just not going to be here. and I'll say, oh no, Spider-Man's coming out, but I'll be doing Cup of Jones next week, and I'll just forget or something. The group stream, they'll be like, we don't know where Jones is. And I'll be like in the corner of my house, just like, nobody bother me. I'm playing Spider-Man. And then that's September. There's a lot of stuff. There are a lot of really great games that are coming out before the end of the year, and I'm sure a lot of people are frustrated because I might not be mentioning the games that you are necessarily excited about. But there are just a lot of games that I'm excited about. I'm always excited when a LEGO game comes out, and it makes me sad because I never seem to make enough time for them. But LEGO DC Supervillains comes out on October 16th, and it looks super jolly. I will only have 10 or so days to play it because Red Dead comes out on the 26th. But it looks fun. I played it at E3. It was fun. A lot of the original voice actors reprised their roles, which is great. And it's just fun to be the bad guys. It's fun to have the Justice League show up and be like, hey, what are you doing? And you're like, wait. They're the bad guys. I actually want to stop them. So it's fun to like set up a trap and be like, haha, Flash, you're stuck. Also, Starlink, the Battle for Atlas, comes out on October 16th. I don't know how long it's going to take to play that game. I don't know when I'm going to be getting a copy of Red Dead Redemption 2, so we'll see, Starlink. But you're coming out for a Toys to Life game. I am a Toys to Life fan, but I am also a Red Dead fan, so it's bad timing. But I'm really curious about Starlink. I'm curious how big that campaign is. The story I didn't hate. The cutscenes are actually like kind of cool. I'm really interested to see the big picture of Starlink and how I'm playing that game at E3 and my thumb is like kind of getting scraped a little bit by the bottom of one of the toys, and so I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to keep this on the controller. I'm sorry, I'm just not. Like, I think it's an interesting setup, and I'm sure kids with smaller hands really appreciate it, and they love zooming around with the ship on there. I am just going to put that on so the game recognizes that I own it, and then I'm going to take it right off and then just upload it that way through the game and level up the stuff that I like. They say a lot in Starlink. They're like, picking my own party is my biggest weakness in any sort of strategy RPG. Great with whatever you give me, but start getting lost as soon as you ask me to pick and choose. Says Easy Allies. Is that Blood? I hope we have Red Dead during those 10 days. Maybe it's Blood. Maybe Blood's back. I missed Blood jumping back in. Sorry. That's my first Blood comment that I picked up. So yeah. I'm curious about Starlink. I'm curious about Lego, but I even just put it as Red Dead Redemption on this list. Let me just change that. Red Dead Redemption 2 comes out on October 26th. We're now 3 months out from Red Dead Redemption 2. I will posit that we are 3 months out from the next Rockstar game. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter. They make 2 games a gen. So there you go. This is an event. This is a generational event that Rockstar is publishing a game, that they are making a sequel to this game that was so unexpected and so good. When I first heard of the original Red Dead Redemption, I was like, oh, okay. Kind of like a more open world Z game. And then I played it and I was like, oh no, it's just open world. It's a Grand Theft Auto Cowboy game. And I am so excited to just kick up mud in that game and just betray all of the people in my gang and just... Oh man, that game looks so good. It just looks really pretty. I love open world games, and to me, it's not just that the open world looks realistic. Forza Horizon looks beautiful, but it's about how can I attach myself to this world? How can I soak in this world and get really a vibe of what this world is like? I've been playing Crew 2, and it's interesting to like think of like, what would it be like to live in this America? What would the population of this America be? Because there's not that many towns. There's not that many cities in the Crew 2. And I just kind of mentally attach myself to environments whenever I play games. If there's an invisible wall, why? If the street is blocked off because the bus crashed here, why did that bus crash here? Context, as Kyle Bossman likes to say. And I feel kinship with Rockstar because they feel the same way about their games. And that's evident toward, you know, seeing something like Life Invader in GTA 5. So you have their version of Facebook, which is called Life Invader. Life Invader is available on your phones. Every single character in Grand Theft Auto 5 has a Life Invader page. That updates as you go through the campaign. The CEO of Life Invader, the founder, the Mark Zuckerberg character, plays a very pivotal role in a very memorable mission in Grand Theft Auto 5. You see Life Invader billboards everywhere. People talk about Life Invader on radio stations. Characters talk about Life Invader. When Trevor bumps into Michael again, is reunited with his own old friend Michael, and meets the DeSanta family, his son, whose name is completely escaping me, texts Trevor and says, hey, we should friend each other on Life Invader. So it's like ingrained into this world. It is there. It's not just something somebody mentioned. It's not like Superman Returns where Lois doesn't live anywhere, I guess. You know, it's like all of this stuff is, but Jones, there are millions of followers watching you drive in the Crew 2. Ah, yes, those millions of followers. Watching how? Watching cameras where? Are there drones following me? That would be interesting if you could actually see drones in the Crew, like following you around. You've been here for 40 minutes. It is always the case with Daniel Bloodworth, where he's been around here longer than I think he has. That's the Bloodworth effect. Because he's quiet. He hides in the shadows. He's always watching. So for that reason, beyond anything that we've seen for Red Dead 2, even if there were no trailers yet, and everyone's like, whoa, comes out in October, we haven't seen any trailers, I would still be beyond hype, because there is just something special. Every single time I get the feeling that Rockstar starts development on a new game, they just completely wipe the board clean, throw out all of the things they feel like they have to do with the next game. And so I feel like, well, we're going to get GTA Online again. It's probably going to be something totally new. I'm very excited to see what they do with that game. And I love cowboys, and I love the outdoors. I love hunting things in video games. Not such a fan of hunting them in real life, but I love going out there and getting pelts and rescuing people out in the desert when they're trying to get, you know, picked apart by rustlers. Man, I'm excited. 11:56, 4 minutes left. Here we go. Hitman 2 comes out on November 13th. I'm sure I'll be done with Red Dead by then. Hopefully I won't be playing too much of Red Dead Online to play Hitman 2, but I'm surprised that happens as soon as it does. And my last big great game for 2018, Just Cause 4, comes out on December 4th. I just noticed that. The 4 comes out on the 4th. I hope that game doesn't get delayed. Was surprised to see that on the Walmart leak and then have that get announced and see it and be like, wow, it was not that long since, and not only that, but Avalanche is also making Rage 2 and something else. There's like another game that Avalanche is making. So it was like, wow, that studio's getting really big. Mad Max and Just Cause 3 must have sold a lot. So very curious to see how padded out Just Cause 4 is. And there's a lot of issues that I had with Just Cause 3 that seem to be, if not solved, at least addressed in Just Cause 4. So I'm very curious about that. And I love the hell out of that series ever since Just Cause 2. And so I'm very excited to play that. Even more excited to wrap up this episode of Cup of Jones before noon here Pacific time for many reasons. One of which especially being that it is so warm. I have to shoot so many shows today. And I am so warm here in the studio right now. I'm going to turn off all these lights. I'm going to crank up that fan. I'm going to get this set ready for Huber Syndrome, which will be coming in, and then Friend Code, and then the group stream. We're playing Trials Fusion tonight for a tournament. Hopefully I don't suck, and then we will shoot our podcast and have a jolly time doing that. Ooh, it's July. I got to figure out when we're shooting Trailer Jones. Whatever happened to that Splinter Cell leak? Whatever happened to that Splinter Cell leak? We'll leave it at that. Dang it, I saw that other Avalanche game at E3, and I can't remember the name of it. Robot Dogs. Oh, yeah! It's an open world. I gotta do it. Just because this is recorded and people listen to this later. Avalanche E3 open world. What is it? Generation Zero. There we go. Generation Zero, everybody. Yeah, let's wrap this puppy up. Under 2 hours. There we go. Thank you to everybody for asking questions, especially thank you to everybody that didn't. It was a very short episode, relatively speaking. It was only 8 pages. Normally we have around 11 or 12. And specifically a very small amount of personal questions. So just think, if you ever are like, I have that burning question for Jones, maybe I'll ask it next week. I always appreciate that because these episodes get very long. But I'm always here to answer whatever issues that you possibly have about Biomutant is at Gamescom. Yes. Excited about Biomutant. Is that 2018? I didn't see that on the list of 2018 games, maybe. Yeah, you'll see me again later today. We'll be streaming and stuff. If you're listening to the audio version of this, thanks for listening. Take care, everybody. Cheers.